Hello everyone and welcome to the Hockey Hub. I'm Brennan and today we are going to be taking a look at the trade requests of Sam Bennett and Victor Mete. Sam Bennett, playing for the Calgary Flames, was a highly touted draft pick going fourth overall, but hasn't exactly lived up to that potential. His career total in points is I think around 36, and that was set in his rookie season. So Sam Bennett hasn't been able to actually break that 30-point mark since his rookie season, and he's kind of used more as a bottom six energy winger or sometimes center at this point. Victor Mete was a fourth-round pick back in 2016, and there was a lot of expectations of him when he came into the NHL at such a young age of 19. He's only 22 years old, and he's got 150 games of NHL experience under his belt, but he hasn't been able to be very effective at the NHL level. His advanced stats are pretty good, but his overall statistics and, if you use the eye test and watch him play, you can tell that Mete doesn't exactly bring a lot to the lineup aside from his foot speed. Mete is too small to be a great defensive presence, and his offensive game just isn't exactly there. It's not that he's a bad passer, it's more so that his shot simply isn't that good, so he doesn't necessarily generate a lot of rebound chances or goals himself. Obviously taking a while to get his first goal in the NHL. So it's kind of interesting that these two players have put in their trade requests, and both being from Canadian markets, this is getting some attention right now. So we're going to start off with Sam Bennett. No, I don't think that Sam Bennett requesting a trade should come as a big shock. We see this a lot with high-end draft picks that don't end up panning out the way that the teams or the players would like. And I think this is kind of one of those scenarios where maybe Bennett is hoping a change of scenery could end up benefiting his game. Last year in the playoffs, we did see that Sam Bennett actually, I thought he took that next step forward. He led the team in goals and was tied for points and really looked like a force out there. But in this season, he hasn't been able to put together strong totals, only having 1 assist so far. So it's not like he's been able to be a force out there and continue on with that, great next step he took in the playoffs. There is a lot of intangibles to his game. He is a leader, he can fight, he does hit, and there's a lot of that, grit and truculence to his game. But that being said, Sam Bennett, being a fourth overall pick, you're kind of expected to produce offense, and Bennett simply hasn't been able to do that. Bennett doesn't have a big contract, and he is a restricted free agent at the end of the year, so I don't think that he would necessarily be a hard player to move, but Calgary has already stated that they're in no rush to move him. I do think that this is probably Sam Bennett's last season in Calgary either way. I don't think that Bennett would have a problem playing out the remainder of his one-year deal this year in Calgary. I think he's probably already set and comfortable for that. But this offseason, I definitely expect him to get moved, if not before then. If Calgary's a team on the outside looking in when it comes to the trade deadline, maybe we could see Bennett get moved then. But it's going to be difficult, obviously, with the whole quarantine issue between the borders of the United States and Canada. So Bennett might end up being traded to a Canadian team if he does get traded mid-season, and there is some candidates, obviously. You see so many trade rumors even throughout the season. Guys like Adam Gaudette and Travis Dermott have been out there in trade rumors for the Vancouver Canucks and Toronto Maple Leafs, respectively. So I do think that Sam Bennett is probably going to end up finishing the season in Calgary, unless the trade comes immediately. I did say the same thing about Pierre-Luc Dubois, and he ended up getting traded about a week later. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Sam Bennett. I still think that Sam Bennett can be a good third-line energy winger or center, but I don't think that he's going to ever live up to that fourth overall pick. But moving on to Victor Mete. Now, Victor Mete's situation is a little bit different than Sam Bennett's. Bennett has been in the lineup and he has been playing, he just hasn't been producing, whereas Mete hasn't been able to actually get into the lineup for Montreal yet. I do believe that he's scheduled to play in the team's next game, playing on a pairing with Alexander Romanov. But that being said, I'm not sure if Mete is going to be able to stay in the lineup consistently, and considering that he was at times a top 4 option for the Montreal Canadiens in previous seasons, I do understand why it would be frustrating for Mete now that he's kind of being used as the team's 7th defenseman and hasn't gotten into any game action so far. I do think that Mete's development was probably rushed, in all honesty. As a 19-year-old defenseman picked in the 4th round, I don't think that he was NHL ready when Montreal brought him in, and I think that he could have been a much more effective defenseman if Montreal let him develop a bit more in junior and then maybe in the AHL for a bit. But considering they rushed him to the NHL because of the lack of depth on their blue line back in the 2017-18 season, I think that's kind of hurt Victor Mete's development. I don't know if Mete will he'll ever become a true top four offensive blue liner. Like, he's still so young, and he still has the potential, but it's a matter of whether or not he will realize that potential anytime soon. So Victor Mete obviously struggles with putting up goals. His shot needs a lot of work. And even though he's not a bad passer, he just doesn't seem to pile up a lot of assists, which if you're looking at an offensive blue liner, that's kind of something you would hope for, is that, well, if he can't score the goals, then maybe he would put up the assists, and he really hasn't been able to do that. So when you factor in that Mete's offensive game doesn't generate a lot of points, then you look at his defensive game, and it's really not that strong either. He's not necessarily strong enough to, muscle guys off the puck, but he does use his quick footwork and a good stick well sometimes. So he does have some tools to become an effective defenseman, but I just don't think he's ever going to, turn into that true top four blue liner like Montreal was hoping for at some point. So I'm not really sure what Victor Mete's value is right now in the trade market either. I think it kind of depends on who you ask. People that pay attention to the, analytics and advanced stats would say that, oh, Mete should be playing over a guy like Joel Edmondson, but I don't think that's the case, as Edmondson has been a really good defensive defenseman for Montreal, bringing a lot of intangibles, grit, and currently leads them in plus-minus, whereas Mete hasn't been able to find his way into the lineup. So I don't think that Mete holds a lot of trade value right now, and I don't think that Sam Bennett does either. When you're trying to look at possible destinations for these guys, maybe the first thing to come to mind would actually be a swap of both these players, with Mete going to Calgary and Bennett going to Montreal. I do think that it's not a terrible idea, but it doesn't make a lot of sense for either team, as Calgary is pretty stacked on the blue line, and Montreal already has a lot of forwards, so I'm not exactly sure where Sam Bennett would slot in. He could be a good fourth-line center, but Jake Evans is playing that role pretty admirably right now for the Montreal Canadiens, and I don't think that Montreal really wants to mess up what their forward core has going by adding in a new guy that could potentially kind of mess with some of the chemistry on the team. Not that Bennett has an attitude problem, but more so breaking up lines and everything, where it looks like Montreal's head coach Claude Julien just wants to keep it going. Victor Mete is also cheaper on contracts, and considering how tight Montreal is to the cap, I don't really think there's a fit there for a swap to either team. The Pittsburgh Penguins were reportedly quite interested in Victor Mete, but I think the rumor was that they hadn't exactly offered up enough for Mete yet. So Pittsburgh could be a team that goes after Mete. There was a rumor that they were also in on Vince Dunn, so obviously Pittsburgh is looking to upgrade their blue line, and Victor Mete could be an option for them. We haven't heard much about Sam Bennett or where he could go. I think a team that's kind of starved at center and maybe could use a youth injection, that might be a good fit. I do even think a place like Pittsburgh once again could be a good fit for Sam Bennett, but we haven't exactly seen some rumors or speculation on Bennett yet. I think that Mete is probably a more movable piece. He is younger, and his contract obviously is cheaper since it's close to league minimum. But that being said, I don't think either team would have a hard time moving these guys. I think it's more so just wanting to get fair value or wanting to hold on to these guys for the rest of the season. But that does it for today's video. I appreciate you guys watching till the end. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you guys later. Bye for now.